On June 23, 1985, a bomb exploded on board Air India Flight 182, killing all 329 people on board. It was the deadliest terrorist attack in Canadian history, and the worst aviation disaster in the history of India. But who was behind this horrific act of violence, and why did they do it? In this video, we will explore the events that led to the bombing, the investigation that followed, and the aftermath of this tragedy. The plane, a Boeing 747, was en route from Toronto, Canada to London. On board were 329 passengers and crew, a majority of whom were Canadians of Indian descent. During the 1970s, many Sikhs emigrated to Western Canada. By the following decade, the area around Vancouver in British Columbia had the largest population of Sikhs outside of India. The Sikh religion originated in the Punjab region of India around the end of the 15th century. With a total of 30 million practitioners, it is the world's fifth largest religion. Although Sikhs had sought Indian independence from Britain during the early part of the 20th century, they were angered when, in 1947, Punjab was split in two between Pakistan and India. Facing persecution from the Muslim majority in the west, Sikhs moved en masse to the eastern part, in India. By the early 1980s, many Sikh groups wanted to form their own independent nation, Khalistan, or Land of the Khalsa. The Sikh militant group Baba Khalsa targeted a sect of fellow Sikhs called the Nirankari. A series of murders in the Punjab led to the Indian government storming the Golden Temple of Amritsar, the Sikh holy site, in 1984, in an attempt to apprehend the group's leaders and other leading militants. The estimated 1,000 deaths led to widespread rioting by Sikhs in India. 4 months later, Prime Minister Indira Gandhi was assassinated by 2 Sikh bodyguards as revenge for the attack. Back in Canada, Baba Khalsa's co-founder, a man named Talwinder Singh Parmar, was plotting his own revenge. Thousands of Sikhs in India had been killed in reprisals after the assassination of Indira Gandhi. He approached a local Sikh mechanic, a man named Inderjit Singh Rayat, asking him to build a bomb. Parmar travelled across the country, rallying Sikhs against the Indian government and organising fundraisers for Baba Khalsa. One audience was told, quote, "Get your weapons ready so we can take revenge against the Indian government." In late 1984, one police informant claimed that he had been approached by Talwinder Parmar with a suitcase containing $200,000 as payment for planting a bomb on a plane. Another man, in an attempt to reduce his sentence for theft and fraud, told both the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, CSIS, and the Royal Canadian Mounted Police of a plot to bomb an Air India flight out of Montreal. Both reports, however, were dismissed by authorities as unreliable. In April of 1985, Rayat started making inquiries about purchasing dynamite. His cover story of needing it to blow up a tree stump soon changed when he told an acquaintance that he needed it for trouble in the old country. He purchased a clock and other items from a local Radio Shack and set about making his bomb. The government, however, recorded several phone conversations between him and Parmar and placed Rayat on a terrorist watch list. On June 22nd, a man checked into Vancouver Airport under the name M. Singh for a flight to Montreal via Toronto. He asked the flight agent to check his dark brown Samsonite suitcase, but she initially refused because he was not confirmed on the flight. After threatening to walk away to get his brother, she relented and accepted the suitcase. The plane departed without Singh on board. Once the flight arrived at Montreal's Mirabel International Airport, its flight number was changed to Air India 182. After a short stopover, it departed for London's Heathrow Airport with 307 passengers and 22 crew on board. Just after 8:15 a.m. local time, Flight 182 disappeared from radar screens shortly after reporting to Shannon International Airport in the Republic of Ireland. A bomb hidden inside a suitcase in the forward cargo hold exploded while the plane was at 31,000 feet, 9,400 meters. This caused an explosive decompression that broke up the plane in mid-air. Wreckage settled in water over a mile deep off the coast of Southwest Ireland. Meanwhile, at Vancouver Airport, another unidentified man checked in a suitcase for an Air India flight bound for Bangkok, Thailand. Like his Toronto counterpart, he also did not board the flight. Instead of a plane, this bomb, however, exploded prematurely at the terminal at Tokyo's Narita International Airport. Both this and the Flight 182 bombs were intended to explode at the same time. However, the conspirators had not taken into account that Japan, unlike Canada, does not observe daylight savings time. Back off the coast of Western Island, efforts were made to locate the flight data recorders on the ocean floor. On July 4th, signals from the recorder's transponders were located and both were raised to the surface. The investigation linked the Air India bombing with the bombing in Tokyo, as both planes had originated from Vancouver and contained luggage without the person that had checked them in. Although no bomb parts were recovered from the ocean, the Tokyo bomb had been placed inside a Sanyo stereo tuner that had been shipped to Vancouver. The RCMP traced one sale of these tuners to Inderjit Singh Rayat. On November 6, 1985, they raided the homes of Rayat, Talwinder Singh Parmar, and two other accomplices. The authorities initially lacked enough evidence to link Rayat to either the Air India or Narita bomb attacks. He instead pled guilty to a lesser charge of possessing explosives and having an unregistered firearm in 1986, and received a fine of $2,000. Shortly thereafter, he and his family moved to the UK. 2 years later, however, Rayat was extradited back to Canada to face new charges of manslaughter. His trial began on September 18, 1990, and he was convicted on 2 counts of manslaughter and 4 explosive charges related to the Narita airport bombing. He was sentenced to 10 years imprisonment. On June 6, 2001, towards the end of his 10-year sentence, Rayat was again arrested by the RCMP and charged with murder, attempted murder, and conspiracy for the Air India bombing. 2 years later, he was convicted and sentenced to a further 5 years in jail. Rayat's legal woes continued when, in February 2006, he was charged with perjury. Charging him with 27 counts, the judge stated, quote, "I find him to be an unmitigated liar under oath. Even the most sympathetic of listeners could only conclude, as do I, that his evidence was patently and pathetically fabricated in an attempt to minimize his involvement in his crime to an extreme degree, while refusing to reveal relevant information he clearly possesses." On September 19, 2010, after a second trial, Rayat was convicted of perjury and sentenced to another 9 years in prison. Rayat was the only individual to face justice for the Air India attack. Talwinder Singh Parmar returned to India after the bombing, where he was killed in an encounter with Punjab police in 1992. Several memorials were erected to honor the victims of Air India Flight 182. Almost 40 years after the bombing, a study showed 9 out of 10 Canadians had little to no knowledge of the attack, and only 1 in 5 classified the bombing as the worst mass murder in Canadian history.